Hey everyone, and welcome to Indie Game Arcade, a podcast all about indie games. In this episode, we're talking about Nunholy and None Shall Intrude. My name's Chris.
And I'm Joseph.
Joseph, I have a problem. Sometimes I want to play a game like Hades or Hades 2. I want to play it, but then I really just, I want them all to look like sexy nun waifus.
Well, you are in luck, my friend, because that sounds like Nunholy is exactly what you're looking for.
Oh, okay. That's what that is. Okay, perfect. I've got some notes here, really coincidentally, about Nunholy, which is really strange.
Game start!
So Nunholy, released June 16th, 2025, developed and published by Chowbee, which I believe is a solo developer. I could be wrong, but I believe so. Currently retails for $7.99 and on sale right now as of recording for $6.79. For a short description, in a world overrun by vampires, a group of nuns with their own stories have arrived at the Hunters Guild. They are ready to wield any power, even that of demons, to defeat their enemies. What fate awaits them on this perilous journey? Nunholy is an action-packed roguelike game where players control battle-hardened nuns, exploring dungeons and hunting vampires. This was one that we thought was coming out a while back. And then, we were ready for it. I think it was supposed to come out, what was the 5th or the 6th? Then totally just kind of disappeared off of the slate because there were some issues with Steam.
It was supposed to come out early January at some point. It ended up releasing January 16th. So still prior to the recording of this episode, but I hadn't gotten a chance to play it. I had wanted to, and I know I had brought it up on the week before it released, but then it just didn't end up releasing. It got held back. It was kind of stuck in the Steam review process for one reason or another. I was looking at some of the developer notes on that, and it just ended up being delayed for a TBA amount of time, and so they finally let it free, and it is released.
Yeah, thankfully, because I was worried that it was going to be a case of getting pushed back for like several months or something held it up, and then we don't hear about it for like a long time. But
which
that wasn't the case.
Which is very strange to me, because before I blocked off like adult content showing up on my feed, I would get recommended all kinds of different like weird visual novels that I knew were very like distasteful.
Yeah.
And so for things like that to be so predominantly recommended to me, and then this to be held back, when surprisingly from all the hours I've played of it, I have seen nothing. There's been no nudity and no sexual content. It's just been the art style.
The only thing I noticed was on the upgrade screen, like when you're choosing what ability like you want to absorb and upgrade your character, there's just like that like off to the side because they're kind of showing, and it's more of like a story element like done visually where there's like the marking on their backs, with the like red glowy thing. You see a little bit of,
but
you just see a little bit of side boob,
though.
and that's it. That's as much as I've seen.
Right. But like that is nothing compared to like I think the expectations are of seeing the initial art of this. So I just don't want people to go in with the wrong idea. Whether you're looking for that or not, you're not going to really get it here.
Yeah, because on the like one of the top tags on this game, like, and I'm saying like top 3, I believe says sexual content. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
I've played this game for 7 hours and I haven't seen any of that.
No, not at all.
Unless they consider side boob sexual content, which debatable.
I would just say more viewing pleasure than anything. But like,
but it's definitely not a headlining feature is what I'm saying.
But you're right in that this is within a world where I feel like 50% of games on Steam right now are hentai visual novels. So I'm like, come on, Steam. Come on. All right.
Yeah, maybe Steam just misunderstood what this was and was like, nah, we've got enough of this. It's like, no, I just try it out. I promise it's not what it looks like.
Maybe they thought it was supposed to be something that was more graphic and that they were tying it up over that because they thought the developer was being misleading about what it was. That's the only thing I can think of. But
who knows? Who knows? Either way, it finally got released.
It did.
Here it is.
And so tell us about it.
Yeah, so gameplay-wise, the first thing that I can easily compare it to is Hades, because the perspective of it and the general gameplay flow of it is very, very similar. If you've played a lot of Hades or any Hades, then you will kind of know what you're getting yourself into here. Instead of one character, though, you can choose between 3 different nuns. Weirdly, so I've only played as one, which is Preya, the redheaded axe nun, and she's like a vampire hunter, but you only get one nun option per save. So that means if I wanted to switch, I would essentially have to start a new save. I mean, there are multiple slots for saves. You don't have to overwrite your old one, but you also don't get the progress from your old one either. So it's a strange thing of okay, there's 3 character options, but you really can only choose one and you have to stick with that one all the way through. So I can understand that encouraging multiple playthroughs. But on the other hand, that just feels like a really cheap way to encourage multiple playthroughs. Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably more behind it than that. But really, just go in knowing that whoever you choose, you're stuck with that person through the entirety of your runs.
Yeah, I've seen too, and I can't say for my own experience, but from what I understand, so Preya is definitely the more well-balanced out of the 3 too. I would have to play more on my own to understand with the other characters, but I have seen some criticism that the other 2 nuns are not nearly as well balanced as far as gameplay as she is.
I have no idea. I've only played Preya, and I just chose her because she was the first nun up there. I was like, okay, let me try her first, not knowing that I couldn't choose anybody else afterwards. But sure. I'm fine with my choice. I like the way she plays. Yeah. So I just can't speak for how the other ones do.
It is a weird choice though, locking you that way, where it's just replays would be more encouraging or more encouraged should you be okay, well, now I can try out this other character. It won't be so bad because I've got such and such upgrades that apply to my run already because I unlock these things through Preya. But here you got to start completely over. And that's pretty rough.
And I guess that's the biggest kind of contention I could see towards this. If you really wanted to do that and just play as a different nun with the carrying over the upgrades that you had, the permanent upgrades that you had from the other one, you just can't do that. Yeah. And it's not that this is such a complex long game that you couldn't power another one up very quickly. I know now that I am very familiar with this system, even though I spent 7 hours on it to get where I am right now, which is the top rank and I've beaten the Vampire Queen, I could probably do it in half the time now, knowing what I know. So sure. Not a huge deal, but also something I just found was a very strange choice or an interesting choice to say the least.
Right.
But I won't harp on that any longer. Like Hades, the combat mechanics and power-ups are very similar, where you're upgrading your main weapon, your sub-weapon. You also have a skill, and you have artifacts. The artifacts is where it is different because you are putting them in your inventory in a very Diablo 2-like fashion, where your inventory is this grid, and whatever you can fit in there is what you're stuck with. You can discard things and make room for new things, but if you can't fit anymore, you just can't fit anymore. It's not like you have a specific number. It's just there are kind of more powerful artifacts that are just larger, and so they take up more space, or sometimes they're oddly shaped like a cross, and you have to just find a way to fit it in there, which is kind of cool. Especially unlike Diablo 2, luckily you can rotate these items, so it helps to optimize that space better. Yeah. That's kind of that's I was satisfied with that, just being able to find the space for everything, be yeah, this feels good because I've got it all fit in there nicely and it's all working well towards my build. So that's just a fun side thing. Was it necessary? No, but it's kind of a cool little ad they had, and I could see why they did it, especially for the more powerful things. You can't just load up on those big crosses. Because you can get multiple of the same item if you happen to run across them. There's RNG to it, of course, so you may not. But I've stacked at least 3 of these big holy crosses that take up 4 spaces. And that was just a really nice thing to have once I made room for them.
And all those artifacts Those are all like passive ability like additions, correct?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, but I'm pretty positive. Yes, because it'll just be like when you do a hit with your main attack, like with your main weapon, there's a 33, or you'll do 33% more damage at the point of impact or something. And then in addition to that, you can also upgrade your these same artifacts, like by taking them to this certain room that you drop them on this point, and that upgrades them to, each only have like one additional upgrade they can have, which basically is like, if it's an item that lets you shoot one extra shot with your sub weapon, maybe the upgrade will be like doubles the amount of like extra things that this artifact does, which means you'll do 2 shots extra instead of 1 shot extra. So that's just a simple example, but there's a lot of like little things like that. And when I say rooms, it's very Hades like in the sense like you're seeing what's in the next room you want to go to. You get a choice between multiple rooms, and they all have little symbols on them that'll tell you what kind of room it is. And generally, you'll kind of have to go through another fight to get to the end of this room, unless it's like a healing room or like a merchant room, and then you just go directly to that thing. But for the like artifact upgrade rooms, you have to go through the battle, and then after that battle, there will be this kind of artifact upgrade sigil in the middle that you just drop your item onto, and that will upgrade it. So that is very Hades-like in the sense that you kind of are choosing your own path as you go through. But you don't know exactly what your options are going to be until the battle's over. And I think that's all just really randomized. So you'll not really get the same run twice kind of situation.
Sure. Yeah.
The different kinds of attacks are physical, fire, and holy. And you'll find things that sometimes complement each of those. But I like to find, I like to try to find items that it's like, okay, I'm gonna make this a holy run. So let me try to stack all the holy things I can get on top of each other and make it just like a really powerful holy build. And that's kind of what I find really fun. But you can be more mix and match if you want to, depending. There are items that like adjust or help you adjust to that. But it's one of those things where it just depends on what kind of run you either want or just what kind of run you're stuck with because you just keep finding certain item types.
Sure.
So that in that way, it helps to differentiate those runs. As far as the progression goes, you're going through these different dungeons and you are entering those rooms. Like I said, you eventually end up after the end of these dungeons, which I'm going to say is like 5 or 6 different rooms. I may be like wrong, but it's somewhere around that. Then you'll reach the boss door and you kind of go through different levels of boss vampires from Knight to Baron to Count to Duke. And then the initial like lockout is after you beat the Duke, there is this larger door in the Duke's room that will have like chains on it. And then it'll have 3 chains. So you'll beat the Duke once, it'll take one of the chains off twice, it'll take the other. And then on the third one, you fight the Duke, it removes that last chain, and then you go in and fight the Vampire Queen directly after the Duke. So you really have to beat it 3 times to actually get to the Vampire Queen.
Have you beat the Vampire Queen?
I have, yeah. As you're going through, I didn't even mention the vampire upgrades. So you have the option of either absorbing like vampire energy from the unholy enemies that you're beating. Like there'll be this big red orb that falls on the ground after you beat a room, and it will have a number in it, just let's say like 100. Yeah. So you can either choose to absorb that as vampire energy, and that will level you up to where you can start learning vampire powers or just like passive abilities or things like that. Or you can break it and then just use it as currency to purchase more items or upgrades or things like that. So you can choose on a really base level, either a vampire run or a human run. As a human, you are very underpowered in comparison to what you could be doing a vampire run. So when I beat it, I was probably level like, I don't know, I'm going to say like 15 or 18 or something. So I was like using a lot of the vampire abilities, and that's when I beat it, and it gave me a vampire ending. So I was like, okay, cool. But that means there's also a human ending. And I could have seen that coming a little bit because some of the missions that you're getting as you kind of go through these runs are saying like, beat the Knight vampire boss at level 1, beat the Baron vampire boss at level 1. And level 1 means you just haven't absorbed any of that vampire energy. You're just staying human. And so I've gotten to the Queen, as human level 1. So I've beaten all the other vampire bosses in between, but I lost on the queen's second form. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I know I can do this. I just have to come back and try it to see what the human ending looks like.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's like I'm going to say quote unquote challenge mode of it, is to stay level 1 and still try to get through the whole thing without relying on any of the vampire abilities.
I love that. I think that's a really cool addition to the game, letting you kind of choose your difficulty sort of as you're playing rather than like right at the beginning. Like that's a cool idea to me.
And you're not super like gimped from it either, because since you can either choose to absorb vampire energy or use it as currency, essentially, you're still able to like power up your items or get more artifacts or things like that you wouldn't be able to do if you did a vampire run, because you'd be leaning more heavily on the vampire abilities. So you're not defenseless. You just are having to play a different way and more into your artifacts than you are your powers.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And so you go from, I think it's D rank is the starting one, maybe E, but you can go up to S rank. I am now an S rank vampire hunter as Freya. It really doesn't take too long to get there, as long as you're completing missions and stuff, especially if you're completing those level 1 vampire boss missions. Like those give you a lot of experience. So you get S rank pretty quick. And the only real difference that makes is the amount of items you start with and the kind of things you start with. Like instead of having one artifact to start with, once I'm like A level or B level or something, I now get 2 artifacts to start with. So it doesn't make a huge difference. And it's more just like I don't know, like it helps empower your future runs a little bit further. But in addition to that, between runs, you're also collecting this like coin currency that you can use to do perma upgrades between your runs as well, to your like health or your attack power, things like that will carry over into future runs, like any roguelike of the same ilk. But again, that's just stuck with your specific run exactly. Yeah. As far as I know, I don't think anything carries over to the different save slots. So I might be wrong about that, but my understanding is that is not the case. So art style, obviously anime, waifu, hentai inspired.
Yeah.
And it is very well done. It looks good. But as I said, I haven't encountered any nudity in the entirety of my playthrough, and I've beaten this game and I've gotten S rank. So unless they're locking some kind of like really like crazy scene behind the human, beating it as the human run, then I cannot imagine that there's anything in here that's too like lurid or offensively, I don't know, like adult.
No, there's
rated,
nothing even really like lewd or anything that I've seen of it so far. It's just very fan servicey. As far as like how everything looks. Yeah, so. Exactly. So I just want you to go in with the right idea of like, this is not just that. It actually has a really good gameplay mechanic behind it. Yeah. And the soundtrack is pretty rocking during combat. Like it's got a really cool beat to it, and it's like very metal. So you're kind of like getting really into those battles. And then when you're back at your base, that has a really calmer gothic tone to it. And so it feels right, and it fits the aesthetic well. Do they have a built-in reason within the game for like, if you die, you said that you got defeated against the vampire queen, for like your death and coming back again the way something like Hades does? I don't know. I probably, but it's definitely nothing as complex as that. Sure. It may just be you were kind of resurrected in some holy way. I have no idea. Like, okay. It doesn't spend a lot of time on it. If it does, you just kind of wake up at your home base in the church and you're like, okay, cool, I'm back. And you just keep going. But there's not like a huge amount of like additional story to everything between any of your runs. Okay. There are a lot of NPCs you'll talk to both during your runs, and there's like 3 at your base that will give you additional upgrades. But yeah, no, and some of them have story elements to them. There's also this different currency that you're picking up, these like soul gems you can give as gifts to these different NPCs and get your kind of rating with them up better. And that just kind of adds to, like, for instance, at the beginning after each dungeon, you will encounter this one who can heal you a little bit. And so the more
faction rating you have with her, then the more she'll be able to heal you before you go on. Because you don't regain health after you fight the bosses. So that's really your point of like, okay, I need to like get on my health back right here before I progress in the rest of this dungeon. So yeah, they have different points, and like different merchants will give you different things if you have higher faction with them. So simple things like that. The other things those soul gems are used for is to add permanent power-ups to your vampire abilities if you choose that route, which is also something you can do back at the church. So there are a few different permanent upgrade things you can do while there using different currencies.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then as lots of currency, lots of different things, but no microtransactions or anything like that. It's all in-game currency. Yeah. So my experience has been like, while it's not as smooth or in depth, like I was saying, as Hades by any means, I've actually had a really good time with this game. Surprisingly good time, even, I would say. I've seen some complaints about the combat feeling a little too floaty with no real feeling of locking on to your enemies. And to that, I would just say, like, maybe that is a skill issue, because like it's not something that has really impacted me at all. I can understand, like, yes, it does feel a little looser than something like Hades, definitely not as like just like well crafted and tight as that kind of combat, but it's nothing that really messes with your gameplay as long as you're just aiming in the general direction of the enemy. And I played on controller the whole time too, so it's like no issues at all with like hitting my targets. The only thing, maybe initially, like I would say, like my first run, I kind of had to get used to that, but I adjusted really quickly, and I've only lost like, I think 3 runs out of the multiple that I've done to get to where I am. So it's fine. Like, you'll be okay. You'll get used to it. It's not like
every game has like locking on, you know? So it's kind of
no,
like,
I don't even know if Hades has locking on. I think I don't remember.
I don't remember it having that either. So it's kind of like, I don't know. That seems like such a weird gripe to have with the game.
Yeah. Like maybe there's like a soft lock on feature with like, maybe as you're facing someone, it will kind of hit more towards them. But not in this game, I don't think. Like, yeah. But again, I just didn't have a problem. If I was swinging my axe, I knew where I was swinging it towards, and I was hitting the enemies I was intending to hit. So no issue.
Yeah. It's just such a weird gripe. Why complain that the game doesn't hold your hand enough? So I don't know. Yeah, that's just me.
I've just played a lot of these games, and it just wasn't really noticeable to me very much. It wasn't until I had read that I was like, well, I guess it does feel a little bit different, but not in any way that deterred me from, just learning the new system and going on.
Yeah, exactly.
There are 2 things I did want to point out, though. One about the gameplay, and 2 about the performance. So for the gameplay, my only real complaint is that there is very little indication that you're actually taking damage, especially when you're fighting like multiple enemies that have like little small attacks, like you're getting like stuck with a spear or something, or there's a little bat hitting you. Like there might be like a small chime of some kind, like a little tick if you take some damage. But unless you're like looking at your health, when you're in the heat of battle, it's really hard to notice that you've been hit. So my solve for that would be like either make it have a louder sound, or just have some kind of overlay that when you take a hit, like your screen turns red for a second, just so I know that I've taken damage and I need to be more careful. Because there have been multiple times where it's like, I didn't even realize I was getting hit until I look up and I was like, oh crap, I'm at like half health. Like I need to be careful. The other thing, gameplay wise, even though I was running at like a consistent 120 FPS, at 1440 resolution, just because that's what I have it locked out as 120, there were a weird amount of like what felt like choppiness, or like I was losing frames, not in a sense that it was like freezing up, but I don't know if it was like the game engine or just the way that some of the I guess textures were built. It didn't impact my gameplay at all that I know of, but so I'm not sure if it was even affecting my character model, or if it was just like the way the background is kind of scrolling as I moved felt a little choppy. So I don't know exactly what it was, because I was watching my frame rate as I was doing it. I wasn't losing any frames at all. It was 120 straight, but it was just kind of as I would start walking up in a direction, it kind of just felt like the background is like skipping a little bit. And I think like I don't even know if like some people would notice it. It might be like that unimpactful. But to me, it was the way that it's really distracting to watch someone's TV in smooth motion. It's like where you notice it, but they don't.
I hate
it's
that.
like, oh my God, like this is like killing my eyes.
Yes.
And so it was just like a really annoying little, like, not a game breaking thing at all, just distracting to me, that I was feeling like the background wasn't scrolling correctly with me, where I kept trying to check. And I even changed like the resolution and stuff to be like, is it this? Well, like what's going on? And like nothing was fixing it. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that's just the way this game runs. So that was just kind of a strange sort of deal to me. Again, not game breaking, didn't affect the gameplay at all, but it was at least annoying at the very least.
Sure.
So this is one that I would recommend for sure, especially at the price point, because, you know, less than $10. I think $7.99 is like top price.
Exactly.
So just don't be put off by the visuals, thinking it's some kind of like lame hentai visual novel. Or like, don't go into it hoping for a lame hentai visual novel, because
what if that's what they want?
Yeah, well, don't get this, because that's not what it is.
Yeah.
There is actually pretty solid gameplay mechanics and progression behind it, with a decent challenge. It's going to be like Hades light in a way, just because you're not going to get like a huge expansive story, but you are getting at least tight enough gameplay to feel like, okay, this feels good to me because I like that kind of game. At the very least, I would say if you're a fan of action roguelikes akin to Hades, then, and you don't want to burn yourself out on Hades 2 before the actual full game is released, then this is a good placeholder at the right price point for just an in-between game. Or if you're just a general fan of well-endowed waifu nuns, and then look no further, because literally every character you speak to and every character you play as is that.
Yeah. I love that. That's fantastic. It kind of reminded me of, it just triggered a memory of, there's a game where it's called The Last of Waifus, and it's literally somebody basically remade The Last of Us in a way, but it's just a waifu as the main character that you're playing. I don't think there's any sexual content or anything in it, much like this game. It's just that you're playing a well-endowed waifu character in, you know, a zombie apocalyptic, you know, style shooter like FPS. But yeah, it's called The Last of Waifus. And I never played it, but I do think it is in my inventory. So one of these days I'll get to it. So
there is I think it's called Dragon's Crown. I'm going to look it up real quick. There's a witch in Dragon's Crown, and if you know what I'm talking about, if you know kind of thing, like that's kind of what we're talking about here. Yeah, that's exact. Dragon's Crown. Look that up. Look up the witch from Dragon's Crown, and you'll know what you're getting yourself into.
Oh my god! Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that is.
Yeah. She is fully loaded.
That is interesting. My goodness, that defies physics. God, her Dragon's back has to hurt so bad.
But it's not. It doesn't affect the gameplay at all. Like, it's just a weird art choice. And so go in knowing that Nunholy is to action roguelikes what Dragon Crown is to side-scrolling beat-em-ups.
I'm looking at a comparison of like the art from that game from 1998, like the concept art.
In 2013.
To 2013. She's grown up a lot. Like, what happened? Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a thing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. When you were mentioning the waifu thing, that's what it was reminding. That's where my head went. It was like, oh yeah, I remember there was this PS3 game. Yeah. But it was Dragon's Crown.
That's amazing. Purely amazing. Have you ever wanted to play as the boss of a dungeon in a game?
I've done it before in games.
Cool. Do you want to do it again?
I guess, yeah.
Awesome. Then that'll lead me into our next topic here called None Shall Intrude.
New game!
This was released January 21st, 2025, developed by Eterna Ludi, published by Grab the Games. It is $14.99 and currently 10% off of that price as of recording. There's also 3 bundles with other games, each under $20 at the time of this sale. So if I was going to choose one of those bundles, I would probably pick either the bundle with Rungor or the bundle with Takara cards. For a short description, Nunholy Intrude is a roguelike deck building game with tile-based combat, where players assume the role of a giant dragon raid boss. The game challenges players to strategize and utilize elemental powers to fend off heroic challengers, aiming to end their reign, as the raid boss attempts to assert dominance over the land. It follows a roguelike deck building model, except that you are playing as the raid boss. You are a giant dragon. All your cards are elemental based with like fire, wind, or earth. Some of those are damage dealing cards. Some of those are just making effects on the tiles. Like I mentioned before, there is like a grid based, system in addition to doing the deck building stuff, where like enemies will move across that grid to like get closer to you to do their attacks. I was looking at a lot of the reviews on Steam, and I'm seeing a big trend here in people having issues with the element stuff, and that the game does not hold your hand because you can do all these different combinations using those element cards. For an example, you use a wind effect on a tile, it'll make like a tiny little swirly cloud. Use another wind effect on that same tile, then you've got yourself a little tornado, and that might push an enemy back one tile. Then you use a fire effect on that, and you might make a huge fire tornado that does a bunch of damage to everybody on that grid. So you can do all kinds of combos. There's tons of synergies with all these cards. There is nothing that tells you what all those combinations will be, so you have to really experiment and figure those things out for yourself. And there is a wrong way to do some of those. Like if you do wind, and then you immediately put down fire on top of that before building your tornado, the fire's just going to cancel out that wind thing, and you just basically have the little fire on your tile. So I've seen a lot of complaints about that, and to that I would just say, yeah, like I get that, but like you just gotta, like you talked about, you have to just kind of learn the system, and it can get extremely powerful, especially because a lot of the damage cards will amplify the damage based on what effect is happening on those tiles right now. Like there's certain cards where, let's say it'll do 200 or 500 damage. If an enemy is standing on a tile that has like molten lava on it because it's been hit by fire twice already, all of a sudden that damage might be like 800 instead. So you can see where like things like that will just basically build and build and build. You also have this thing called a breathing mechanic. Since, you're a dragon, you always have this like 1 cost or 0 cost card called Inhale. And if you like play that before you do like some sort of move like Fire Breath, it'll do like a ton more damage. So there's lots of cards that also play off of each other in that way as well. With that hex, it is a hex-based grid, the grid that we were talking about. And whenever you start a battle, you're battling against like usually a hero, and then the hero will have an army of like lower HP kind of minions that they'll summon, and they will usually keep summoning them throughout the battle until you take that hero out. But taking that hero out won't end the battle. You still have to wipe out all the rest of the, summoned enemies on that grid. But they do have to like get across that grid to like, get to you. So a lot of the times you have a little bit of time to really kind of lay down what you need as far as like what elemental effects you want on that grid, and kind of build up your game plan and everything. Or just, some of them you might just kind of want to snipe, but they will creep up on you pretty quick. You have to look out for like casters, archers, things like that can attack you from farther away. Whereas, the more melee guys have to get like really close to you to be able to start attacking you. The heroes usually have a way to attack you from anywhere, and they always have quite a bit more HP, and sometimes they'll have like shields or something that they put up too. So
can you play as multiple raid bosses, or is it you're just the dragon? And
it's always a dragon, but there are different dragons you can play as. I believe there are 4 total. I'll save this. I have a criticism about that I will get into in a little bit. But there's like, I believe there's red dragon, which is kind of the default. There's black, there's green. And I can't remember what the other one is.
Would it not just be blue?
It might be blue. I don't know. I don't remember. I've seen black and green. So anyway, that's kind of like the basics of gameplay, like when you're doing a battle. But there's a ton more to this game. So you are presented with an overworld map with different regions to conquer. And each of those regions will have multiple spots with heroes that have varying army sizes. And that means they have scaling degrees of difficulty. And it's definitely one of those games of like high risk, high reward. So if you go after a hero that's just a standalone hero, no army, you're not going to get that much of a reward because it's going to be easy. There's even like some hero-less armies, again, really low reward, whether that's like currency or something. But there's also like those heroes that have like a lot of armies with them, or a big army with like very strong characters or enemies that they'll spawn. And those you'll get like the highest rewards from. So you'll get currencies, or you'll get things like relics if you beat them. So every time you win a battle, you get something as a result, whether that's new cards to choose from, relics, or gold after winning a battle. And relics are basically kind of what you would think. It's something that you choose that stays on your character, and it's like some sort of passive bonus that might increase damage from, like, let's say a certain type of elemental thing like fire, or maybe it increases your max HP, which is one that I have encountered several times. And you also get relics after conquering a certain region. So if you take out all of the heroes and their armies within one of those region chunks, then you'll also get like a bonus relic that's like a really powerful one as a result. There's also like merchants and other random events that you might encounter in that region too. And like triggering those things will also count towards you conquering that region. You also have a talent tree. So you'll be earning talent points, and you can unlock talents to customize how you want to play the run, basically. It allows you to like lean into certain things, like some of those different elements and things like that, whether you want to lean farther into your wind magic, your earth, your fire, different things like that. Also, like I said, you're a boss. You're the raid boss. And what is a hallmark of bosses when you fight them? They've got phases. So, of course, you have phases. Those phases are triggered when you reach a certain threshold of health. Like you lose so much health, you enter another phase. And basically that makes you stronger. You also basically have like these boss mechanics. These are these latent abilities which will kick in when you do enter those different phases. You can unlock more boss mechanics depending on achieving things through the game. Like they're kind of like blocked behind like completing in-game achievements, uncovering certain things. But you can essentially like mix and match different abilities in those boss mechanics to kind of customize what happens when you enter one of those phases. So that's pretty cool. So you basically end up with like 2 phases. So one when you're like closer to about, I want to say it was like 60% health. Can't remember if it was 60 or 50. And then you enter another phase when you're like way down lower, like closer to 30% health. So it's like basically like the more hurt you get, the stronger you get, which can come in really handy. And makes those battles more intense and is really fun.
I guess with any game like this, any deck builder, like where then would be the ability to change up each run? Where would the variety come? Like I think that's the important part. Is like if a game has like one solid run, like that's cool, but it's like, is there enough to where you would see replayability to this? Like in multiple runs? I know you said there are multiple dragons.
Yep,
but are they different enough to where that would, I guess, spice it up and have enough variety to it?
Yeah, so I'll explain that a little bit. So with all of those things I said, there is a main goal to this, and to explain like what does a full run and like the end of that run look like. The main goal is to survive 3 acts, and each act you're able to make 6 moves, whether that is fighting armies, triggering events, or visiting like merchants or whatever. Once you've completed all 6 moves, you're rated by a stronger hero and their army. And if you defeat them, that'll lead you into the next act. If you make it to the end of Act 3, then the Kingdom hero will attack, which is an incredibly powerful hero that does a ton of damage. So you defeat the Kingdom hero, you've won a run. To kind of answer your question as far as that stuff goes, on the map, it is a big map because like time is sort of limited to you because you only have so many moves that you can make. There are things farther out in the map, like specific heroes like that you'll see on that map that you can try to go and challenge. There's also other dragons that you can attempt to go and fight that offer like, really big rewards. Also, I mean, they're extremely, extremely tough, but they're like hard to get to because you have to like be smart about the moves that you're doing, right, to get there. Also, as far as what makes it feel like a different run, it is changing, the talents, changing your boss mechanics, that all stuff, even playing like the same dragon can change up how that dragon functions each run. So there is some differences there. And as far as the different dragons go, the different dragons do have some different abilities. I do have some nitpicks with this game though, which I'll get to.
Yeah, tell me about that, because like generally this sounds cool and it looks cool, but like what's the caveat to that?
I do think some parts of it are a little underdeveloped.
And this is full release or early access?
Yeah, this is a full release. I'll say this. I loved the gameplay. Like, the gameplay feels really good. But the variety of heroes in which you can encounter, so like that hero pool feels very underpopulated. I feel like you run into the same ones time and time again, and you get rated by the same ones like each time. So that feels kind of underwhelming once you're on like a secondary or third run or something. I mean, that seems like a pretty easy fix if you just add more variety to that hero pool. The other thing that I have an issue with is that there are clearly still bugs in this game. And I think the most glaring one that I've seen is I've mentioned that you can play as other dragons like the green or the black dragon. However, no matter what, if you say, I want to be the green dragon, you start your run, you're red. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Wait, why? Okay, explain. Is that a bug or does that happen every single time?
I believe it's a bug because there's like certain abilities you will use and then all of a sudden a green dragon will pop out and do a thing, but and then all of a sudden you're back to red dragon again.
Wait, so is that all the time? Like every time you choose a different dragon, like you're always the red dragon as the like main kind of avatar?
Yeah, so far in my limited experience, yes.
You know what? That's funny because like as I was looking at the store page, I was like, I don't see any other colored dragons. So that's why I was asking about this.
Yeah.
But that might be why, because it only like colors them on their attacks. That's really weird.
Maybe that it was intended to be that way. Like you just play as that dragon and then the other dragons come out and do whatever.
Like they're coming to help you.
But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's weird. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I could see that being pretty glaring.
Yeah.
Especially if it's every single time.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say though, like I think the art is great, as you can see if you're on the story page right now.
It looks very good. Yeah,
very Darkest Dungeon inspired as far as like how everything looks. All the card effects and elemental effects are great. There's a lot of ambient animation on every like board, like when you're fighting and stuff. Like in the backgrounds, there's tons of like ambient animations going on all the time on the battlefields.
Yeah,
really add to it.
The art definitely has that like stark kind of bold black shadow or outlines to them.
Exactly.
Like you said, in a Darkest Dungeon fashion, maybe not as like grim as that, but definitely relying heavily on the shading.
And depending on like what region that you're trying to conquer, like the battlegrounds like change, like you can be doing like the sort of like a kingdom-ish kind of region where it's like you're fighting grassy fields. There is a area where you're kind of battling at sea, so you're like attacking heroes on a ship, and like I love that change up as far as that stuff goes. That's really cool. And honestly, like the heroes that they do have all have different abilities. There is this one, I can't remember what her name was, but she had like this harp thing and she'd play it and she would summon like all these ghosts that would attack, and I found out really quickly they were immune to physical damage. And I was like, oh, crap. So, like, you know, there's certain things you got to get creative with.
Given all of this, it sounds like a mixed bag. Would you, in its current state, would you recommend it?
Play the demo first. If the demo is still up, give that a shot. See if you enjoy it. If you really enjoy the gameplay, I would probably still buy it because bugs and some issues aside, I had a really good time with it. Buying it standalone, I'm probably not there yet. I would probably do it in a bundle. But I would definitely keep an eye on this game because if they address a couple of these issues, I think this has the potential to be a very good game in the way that I got very sucked into like Monster Train for a very long time. This has that feel to me when I started playing Monster Train of like, the gameplay of this, I could see myself really getting stuck on, getting lost in for a while. I just hope that they do more with it and address some of the concerns that I brought up.
I'm looking at the hotfixes since it was released, and it looks like they're on top of it in the sense that on January 22nd, so it was released the 21st, on January 22nd, on January 23rd, and January 24th, there were 3 different hotfixes where they are addressing a lot of these issues. Should it have been released with these glaring bugs? No. But it's great to see that they are at least addressing them very quickly as people are, I guess, reporting them. So that's good to know. That means that they are on top of this. So I even though I haven't played it yet, I'm with you in the sense that like I could see this game having a lot of potential. And will probably honestly pick it up myself because I am a big fan of Monster Train as well and Slay the Spire. And I do love like deck building, like card games, like or deck building, like roguelikes like this. So it's one where even if it's not ready yet, I want to support this getting, I guess, continuing to be like updated. So like I kind of want to buy it just to be like, hey, like I am interested, fix it. But I know that's not the right attitude to have, but I just see a lot of potential here. And so I want to encourage that they continue knowing that people are interested in their product.
I think if anything, they should have released it as early access and not released it and just said, this is the full game. And then I think that it probably wouldn't nearly get the kind of like reviews that it's getting.
Right. Well, because people would be are a lot more lenient on early access. Exactly. At least been like an early access, a short-term early access or something where like, we're going to bring it out in like a month or 2, but here's its current state. We know there's some bugs. At least address those things up front and don't let people just like immediately hit a wall and be like, this game is unplayable. Like, I can't even see my green dragon. What's going on?
They went the Ubisoft route and they were just like, hey, this game, there's some glaring problems. Here it is.
Here, find them for us so we can fix them. Like,
exactly.
That's an early access attitude, but they released it full. That's bold, but maybe not the right move.
Yeah, it's a choice. But yeah, overall, it's very cool, and I wish them luck with the whole thing, and I'll be watching.
I probably will pick it up too, but probably in a bundle, as you said.
Combo!
As far as other games we've been playing, you haven't played nothing. You haven't played shit.
No, well, man, I've been playing a lot more. I'm still on Rivals. I'm still on my Rivals kick. I know, my Marvel Rivals kick. So
suckered in. This is like I'm getting worried about you because this is like when I got into Overwatch. And you started getting worried about me. You were like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
But you were going all in.
But then you became a Junkrat master, and that's how I am with Storm right now. And I am just feeling it. Master. And it's so fun to play with friends and just like kick ass together.
Yeah, those are fun. Those are fun.
But yeah, I'll fall off of it eventually, or at least like back off of it to the point where I will be able to play more variety of games for right now. And actually, you know what? I'm excusing myself because I played through all of Nunholy and like got to the top tier S rank, beat the boss. So I really like devoured that game this week too. So that's my excuse.
That sounds like an anime is like I was an S rank waifu nun vampire hunter. Yeah. I like that.
That time I came back as a S rank waifu vampire hunter nun.
Yeah. That's good. That's perfect. It writes itself. I played 2 games I wanted to talk about real quick. The first was Lonely Mountains Snow Riders. It looks beautiful, as we probably would have, surmised, because Lonely Mountains Downhill was a lot of fun. And this is the follow-up, as I mentioned on the last episode. It's gorgeous. The snow effects are so pretty. There's like a little glisten to the snow everywhere, and that is just fantastic. However, it is significantly more anxiety-inducing than Lonely Mountains Downhill is. Who knew skiing was hard to do? It was a lot of fun, though. You can choose different ways to control your skier, which is kind of nice. So whatever makes you feel more in control of the movement, I would just go with that. But the gameplay is very similar to the previous game, just with skis, and you can do a few more tricks than you could before. I was trying to do lots of flips, but sometimes I'm not good at landing those flips, but it's still fun to try. The other game I wanted to talk about was AI to You with You Till The End. This is the one I talked about last week that is powered by the AI language learning model.
Large language model. Yeah.
That one. That thing you said, those words. This was a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, honestly. I just played the first level all the way through and thought it was going to be fairly easy to trick my new AI girlfriend into just going into the other room while I escaped out the apartment door, but then quickly found that door is locked and you have to figure out where the key is and how to get it, all the while not making her angry or suspicious, or else she will stab you to death. So you have to placate her and kind of trick her and do different things like search through drawers, hack her computer, which also led me to realize an element in this game that I did not expect and won't spoil. But just that, they added some background, an actual story to at least this level, which was really interesting and I didn't expect. And I had kind of a holy shit moment. But the AI is pretty smart, to be honest. So, you can clearly kind of exploit it with however you can, because it is definitely programmed to, the more you kind of, butter her up and stuff, the more it will kind of lean into trusting you more. And then you can sort of try to manipulate around that and try to be like, hey, let's play hide and seek. You go hide. And then maybe she'll go to another room. And I'm like, okay, fuck, I gotta try to find this stupid key. It was fun. I actually had a really good time. It was definitely one of the most unique gaming experiences I've had, especially in a long time. The caveat, though, is I feel like this is going to be a one and done style game. I know there's, aside from the level I played, which is the one in the apartment, there's 2 other levels with, 2 completely different settings, 2 different waifus. One's like a witch thing and one's like a sci-fi thing. Unless they keep adding more scenarios to escape from, I see this as kind of like a one and done. I don't know what the plan is, if this is going to be sort of like a game that does get updated every so often to add more stuff, but I feel like go in with it knowing it's going to be a short experience, but a very interesting one.
Is it a free game?
So it's $8.99. It's still a small price point. It was definitely interesting. The one thing I wasn't sure on, so I was typing all my responses and stuff to AI girlfriend, but there was an icon for the microphone. So I was like, okay, maybe I can just literally say my response, talk, but it didn't seem to work. So I don't know what the deal was with that. And there wasn't anything in the settings to try to choose a sound device or anything. So I don't know what happened there, but I mean, typing works, so.
I guess the replayability might come with like, if it's like any large language model, then you can say the exact same thing that you said before in a different new window, and you might get a completely unique response. So
that's possible.
Maybe that's where replayability comes in, is like you can't really approach it the same way twice. I don't know, though. I don't know how complex it is with all that.
I wouldn't be able to answer that, but I just do know it was a unique experience. It was fun. If you're looking for a game that is like just totally different than something you've done before, I mean, this is something. This is it. I think I would honestly recommend this. I like it's pretty cool. Oh, I did manage to escape. It took me a little. I did die once, but I did finally manage to escape, and you can see that up on our YouTube channel. So go check that out.
Nice.
Final round.
As far as upcoming games on our radar, there's two that I was really interested in. One is coming out on the 28th, which means it'll be out by the time you guys hear this. This is Little Lighthouse of Horror. This is an atmospheric pixel art psychological horror game. That's a lot of adjectives. Inspired by the legend of the Flannan Isles. Maybe that's how you say it. Players take on the role of Lawrence, a lighthouse keeper in the 1920s, tasked with maintaining the light while grappling with isolation, limited resources, and unexplained phenomena, which may slowly start to drive him insane. Or they might be real and they're trying to kill him. So, it like the pixel art looks really good.
Very
it's very
minimalist.
Yeah, exactly. Very minimalistic. With the limit that they imposed on themselves, it looks like a really solid, really fun game. So I'm very much looking forward to that. This next game, I think you're going to really dig the art style of. This is called Batography. This is coming out June 29th. In Batography, you play as a cute little bat dude who just really wants to take a good photo of the moon. It seems like it's really akin to like Night in the Woods as far as the style and the gameplay. You're interacting with people in town, doing like puzzle platforming to take photos, and you're also collecting delicious moon cakes. The art style is really what pulled me in. That's the first thing I saw and what made me think, okay, I need to check this out. Everything and everyone in the foreground is all like silhouette, and I think that looks really awesome. It's a very, very cool visual style. And it looks like it's got a charming little story to it as well.
Yeah, it does look good. I like the aesthetic.
And I believe that game is going to be free on release, which is appealing too. So why not?
Interesting. Yeah, so it must be a short experience.
I believe so. There are two other games that I just want to mention, but I've talked about them before, but just Stone of Madness is coming out on the 28th. Citizen Sleeper 2, Starward Vector, coming out on the 31st. Both games I've very much been looking forward to, especially Citizen Sleeper 2, as the first one was such a good time. I really, really loved that game.
Yeah, the two I want to point out are coming out this upcoming week as well, which are, I guess if I go in order of release, Tales of Iron 2, Whiskers of Winter comes out on the 28th of January. On this one, it's a follow-up to Tales of Iron, which is the 2D Souls-like action-adventure game, very akin to Salt and Sanctuary, if you've played that one, where instead of a person, you play as a rat. So it's basically the same thing. Think about like Mouse Guard on steroids, so like Rat Guard. It's a lot, I guess, grittier and sort of like a more of a grim environment than Mouse Guard ever would be. I know in the first one you were facing off in like the war against the frogs, the rats against the frogs. I don't know this one, how this one differs, or if it's also the frogs or something different, something more sinister maybe. But it is in a wintry landscape instead of what it was before. So that one I'm looking forward to because I love Souls-like games. The other one is Ascendant, which is coming out on the 31st of January. This one is a roguelike dungeon crawler where you play as a wizard and combine magical items to defeat abominations in unique ways. It reminds me a lot, at least visually, or mechanically even, of a game that I played earlier this year. I don't remember exactly when it was, or not this year. It was late last year. I played Magicraft, where you're combining different wands that have a variety of different effects and just seeing what combinations you can come up with. So I enjoy the fun of experimentation with those random items that you find, trying to figure out like weird, unique, or game-breaking combinations you can kind of stumble upon. And normally I don't like trying to find like game breaking things because I just think that's a cheap way to go about it. But in the instance where it's like randomized items, like you never really know what you're going to get into. So you kind of just sometimes fall into game breaking things, which I think is a lot more appealing to me than trying to specifically construct something to break a game. So that's why like just playing around and experimenting with these things is always fun. Just seeing what you can come up with. And it looks like this game Ascendant is kind of akin to that as well. So looking forward to it.
I also really like the art style of that one. Well, both of those games, honestly. Tales of Iron 2, again, we tend to go back to bringing up Darkest Dungeon a lot, but it's because it's got such a very stylized look. Tales of Iron 2 has a little bit of that to it, and I really enjoy that. But then Ascendant, just the character designs are really, really cool looking, and it's a very colorful, vivid palette.
It reminds me of, what is that one called? Wizard something.
You thinking of Wizard of Legend?
Yeah. Wizard of Legend is what it reminds me of visually a little bit.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm looking forward to that as well. It looks fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, you're fantastic for listening to this, and you'll be even more fantastic if you can do us a favor and just share this episode with someone who loves indie games. As always, you can catch me playing some of the games we discussed on this show over at our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/nerdsloth, and catch hundreds of hours of bonus content for just $1 a month by subscribing over at the Nerdsloth Treehouse at patreon.com/nerdsloth. We also have an exclusive podcast there called the Nerdsloth Podcast for those at the $5 tier as well, along with a few other exclusives only available to those members. At nerdsloth.com, you can find a link to our Discord server, as well as lots of other fun stuff. And you can also join our subreddit for Indie Game Arcade and help us post more reviews of indie games so more folks can find games that suit their game style.
Game over.
That's game over for us. My name is Chris.
I'm Joseph.
And we'll continue on the next episode. Hopefully with sexy waifus again.
Continue.
Indie Game Arcade is recorded and produced by Sloth Creative. If you're looking for more gaming content, head over to youtube.com/nerdsloth. For additional podcasts, go to nerdsloth.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are multiple tiers available at patreon.com/nerdsloth, with hundreds of hours of bonus content from everything we do at Nerdsloth Creative, including bonus gameplay videos of the games we talk about on the show. The theme music for the show is Retro Game Tapes by Audio Lime. If you'd like to get in touch with us, or if you're an indie game developer and would like us to consider reviewing your game, send us an email to podcasts@nerdsloth.com with the subject line Indie Game Arcade.